You are listening to the Body Charge podcast, and I'm your host, Sandy Sanderson. Welcome to the Body Charge podcast. Today's topic is transform stress and PTSD into strength and a better life. Humanity seems to be at a difficult crossroad at the moment, with many existential threats that can cause chronic anxiety, stress, and PTSD symptoms. These challenges at times can seem insurmountable and overwhelming. So how do we get ourselves back on track with strength and purpose? My special guest today is Sophia Elan, a former corporate lawyer and prolific author. Sophia has a master's in natural health and is certified in hypnotherapy and HeartMath. Her coaching program, Master the Art of Life, offers tools which help build resilience, manage emotions, and restore meaning with a sense of fulfilment. So welcome aboard, Sophia. Lovely to have you on the Body Charge podcast.
Pleasure to be here. I'm hoping to share some insights with your audience that they can find helpful.
So it's interesting that you used to be a corporate lawyer. What led you from law into health?
So I was a corporate lawyer for almost a couple of decades, and quite honestly, financially, it was rewarding, but it wasn't personally fulfilling to me. And I had a husband who was more focused on saving money as opposed to experiencing life or supporting me in what I actually wanted to do, because I'd always wanted to work for a charity. So I finally got up the nerve when he just wouldn't be supportive of that to separate from him. And he responded by trying to kill me, not because he didn't want to be separated from me, but because he didn't want to be separated from my stream of income. And then in our divorce, he actually sought permanent alimony. And I just had a visceral reaction to all of it. And so I quit my job, and originally I moved to Argentina. I had spent a lot of time there with one of my jobs and just fell in love with the culture and just wanted a literal change of scenery, and started focusing on things that meant a lot to me, travel as well as holistic wellness. So I got the natural health degree as well as different fitness certifications. And I started writing. So I've written across several genres, and I was basically I was preaching what I was practicing in my books. And I ended up, I was only in Argentina for a couple of years, and I ended up in the Mediterranean, where I've been basically for the past couple of decades. So I was writing holistic wellness books, and I was feeling quite hypocritical because I realized that I still had the overhang of traumas that I hadn't resolved. I went to therapy after my husband tried to kill me at the insistence of my best friend, because I was kind of like, c'est la vie, things happen. I really wasn't appreciating the gravity of the situation, and they knew it way better than I did. And during therapy, I started uncovering incidences of childhood sexual abuse. And I started realizing I was getting into the same sort of patterns of relationships. I was drinking too much. I was just kind of biding time. And I knew that I had to do something to heal. And again, I didn't feel like I should be preaching about holistic wellness when I knew that I was struggling so much from things that I needed to deal with, because I basically just repressed and suppressed. And so I wrote a book. It's an uplifting memoir about overcoming those traumas. And I always say, it's not a book about abuses, because throughout, I basically say that I had some dark moments of traumatic incidences, but my life overall, I was always happy. I was always resilient. I was always optimistic, and I was always grateful. So I wrote the book, thought, okay, check, I'm healed, I'm all good. Then I got a huge setback because I wrote the book under a pen name. My family found out, basically disowned me, which hugely triggered my deep abandonment wounds from childhood. Also had a relationship, another horrid breakup of a relationship at that time. And I realized that, I was floundering and I needed to do something to really resolve it. So I started delving into different things, started meditating more, came across something called heart coherence, and realized that somehow intuitively I had kind of been practicing that throughout my life. And I think that that's what I attributed to my resilience and my happiness despite these events, which I didn't want to be the story of my life. And so I decided I needed to author my life in addition to writing these books. So that's when I came across HeartMath. And then I realized the scientific validity of what I had been doing for those years. And it just catapulted me to wanting to get certified in it so that I could help other people, because I didn't want people to take so long as I did to understand why they needed to resolve their traumas or how to resolve them. And it also applies to just chronic stress in general. It doesn't have to be trauma specific. And I think most of us these days, realize that we're experiencing chronic stress, chronic sleep deprivation, et cetera.
Yeah, we're such emotional creatures, us human beings,
Yes,
aren't we? There's
definitely.
some people, they fall into a psychopathic category, and in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of really easy because they don't have to deal with emotions. They can just
Mm-hmm.
cut off, and
Yeah.
they don't suffer from PTSD symptoms
Mm-hmm.
because they haven't got the emotions in the way. It's kind of a real brain disconnect, isn't it? But in us humans, that strength is sometimes a weakness. So if we get hurt and we don't
Mm-hmm.
recover, it creates a kind of a scar tissue, doesn't it? And it
Mm-hmm.
affects the autonomic nervous system. So that's our autopilot, where it we do things and we don't think about why we do them. We just like, I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I feel that way. What how does HeartMath help us uncover those background viral programs that we've stored from any kind of emotional hurt that's impacted us? And how do we overcome that issue and reset in a way?
So, HeartMath basically has a set of scientifically proven tools and techniques to cultivate awareness of how much our emotions do deeply impact us, and then to cultivate something called heart coherence. They definitely recognize that we unnecessarily deplete a lot of energy through our emotions. Most of us have, I don't know, 70,000 thoughts a day, and 70% are negative. And, people expect their life to change, but they're basically reliving the same program day in, day after out. And one thing that was particularly my aha moment for my personal healing, even before discovering HeartMath, was understanding that at a subconscious level, basically that's running the show for like 95% of our beliefs and our behaviors. Because I was a puzzle to myself as well as to others. Because as you said, I'd be like, why am I acting this way? I know it doesn't rationally make sense. And I was stuck in survival mode, quite frankly. And that's not somewhere where you're rational. So HeartMath realizes that, and they know that emotions significantly affect our heart rhythm. And we have a bidirectional communication between our brains and our hearts. And I think most of us tend to think of our brains as command central, you know, top down, taking care of everything. Whereas our heart, which actually has its intrinsic nervous system, it's a heart brain, is sending more signals to the brain than vice versa. So by cultivating heart coherence, we can cultivate brain coherence. And when we do that, everything works better. So we have our mind, body, and our emotions in sync. And that has huge ramifications. The results from doing HeartMath are crazy. They have lots of studies. They've been doing this for 30 years. Within 6 to 9 weeks of practicing heart coherence, they did a study on 14,000 people, and they had an increase in emotional vitality of 27%, improved sleep by 36%, increased calmness by 49%. I just find these statistics amazing. Decreased anxiety and depression by 67%, decreased fatigue by 53%, and decreased anger by 67%. Another study where there was a 60% reduction in anxiety, 45% reduction in exhaustion, significant improvements in listening ability to focus. So it impacts us personally, professionally, with our relationships, with our jobs. And what I love about it most, because I have my philosophy in the holistic wellness things that I'm advocating for and writing about, is called KISS, Keep It Simple, Sweetheart. And we all have a heart, so it's accessible to all of us. And if you learn these techniques, you take that with you for the rest of your life. And I think that it's just a transformative practice to learn, that everyone could really benefit from.
Yes. So our heart, as our body, wants to keep it alive. As you mentioned before, we can get stuck in survival mode,
Mm-hmm.
and everything is designed to try and keep us alive. But
Mm-hmm.
but somehow or other, we can't get past a certain belief system that keeps us stuck in that mode rather than transitioning to that next phase of resolution. So What kind of, when you say practice heart math, what kind of things do you do to pass over into, fight or flight, that stuck mode, into resolution mode?
It's basically, I mean, I think the best way to describe it is almost like an intentional heart meditation. Um, you're definitely cultivating positive regenerative emotions, which is what can cause the heart rhythm to go into a coherent state and then send the signals to the brain. Whereas the negative emotions create an incoherent heart rhythm. And it's also interesting because we're emitting signals like 3 feet all around us. And so, the saying misery loves company. And I always love saying happiness loves company. And so not only does it impact us, but it impacts those around us. So just learning it yourself can be transformative in your relationships just by that mere presence of being with somebody. And in my case, I had deeply embedded beliefs of I just had a lack of self. I was always treated as a means to an end. I was taught that love was conditional. And so that I took that into all of my relationships. And so once I realized about the subconscious, I actually started turning to affirmations. And I formerly thought that that was just kind of woo-woo, silliness. And it deeply impacted me. And that's actually what led me to get certified in hypnotherapy, because you can't just say something over and over again, because if you don't actually believe it, if you don't feel it in your heart, in your body.
Emotionally.
Exactly. And so hypnotherapy was a way for me to access the subconscious so I could really be embodying those new beliefs that I wanted to.
And you have to be super relaxed to get to that space, don't you?
Yes, exactly.
You have to have those alpha brain waves.
Right, exactly. So, between meditation, hypnotherapy, I think different practices for different people. One of my books is called Mastering the Art of Stress, and I have 52, fairly simple, accessible, inexpensive, if not completely free recommendations to mastering stress. And I had more than 52. And so I was trying to get rid of some of them. And even though I had researched hypnotherapy, I wasn't actually starting to practice it yet. And I thought, oh, people are just going to discount that. So that was one of the first ones to go. So it's kind of funny. I was like, oh, I'm going to become certified. And I'm actually doing it myself. I'm doing self-hypnosis. And that too is something that I find, there's so many guided hypnosis for free online. And some of them, though, weren't really resonating with me because they were cookie cutter and they weren't customized. So some of the things that they were saying sometimes would actually trigger me. So no one knows ourselves, as well as we do. And so it's a tool where you can self-hypnotize yourself. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about hypnosis.
What's the difference between self-hypnosis and meditation?
I think that people get confused about meditation as well as hypnosis. And to me, meditate is basically to become familiar with yourself. And I use that to get the awareness about the things that I want to change, and then use the hypnosis in order to instill the new beliefs that I would like to.
So the hypnosis is a form of affirmation, but with an emotional, a feeling behind it. So is that like, the words that make you happy, the phrase or the images that you attached happiness to, fun, something fun. So energy in motion, emotion.
Yeah, exactly.
So how often do you need to practice this before it clicks over into a new phase, before you see results?
It's funny. I think key to that is how open you are to whatever practice modality you are doing, how self-aware you are. You definitely have to do the introspection with respect to, and it took me a while too to realize that I had to independently deal with my different traumas. I couldn't just lump them all in one category and say, okay, I'm healed, because they were different upfront. And I had no idea that they were impacting me as much as they were emotionally, physically. I was misdiagnosed with so many things like multiple sclerosis and rheumatoid arthritis, and it was all psychosomatic. So I became very self-aware because I was very intent on healing as quickly as possible. And I was shocked at, once I knew the beliefs that I had that were negative and limiting, I could really zone in on those. And I had huge releases from the get-go. So it does accumulate to make sure that you really have those new beliefs embedded. And it's an ongoing process. But I can easily release quickly when I focus on. I mean, basically, I had been taught that my dad literally told me no man would want me other than sex or money. So my whole life, I was betraying myself. I was performing for others. I was the consummate people pleaser to a disgusting degree that very raw and vulnerable in my memoir, because I always say healing doesn't happen in silence or solitude. And I think that people don't understand the trauma psyche. And we need to do that so that we are more compassionate to other people instead of judging them. So it's definitely something that accumulates. But I quickly, once I knew what I needed to zone in on, it had huge impacts. I basically was like Pinocchio all my life, like letting puppeteers pull my strings. And then when they no longer wanted to play with me, discard me, put me on the shelf. And so I had the clarity of what I needed to deal with. And that certainly helped.
Yes, so you were able to self-analyze after you went deep, deep down.
Exactly.
And when you trace it back, I think you can go back to that hurt inner child, because what you've described is scar tissue that's carried forward from a long way ago, which set you up for choosing the wrong man in the first place.
Exactly.
And
exactly. And I had to realize, because even with my pattern of bad relationships, again, my husband tried to kill me and I was kind of like, oh, that happens, next bad abusive relationship. Oh, I have bad luck. And then I'm like, what's the common denominator here? It's me. And I get frustrated. I see so many people stuck, I think, unnecessarily in their trauma. And I see so much, especially like with social media, people commiserating and focused on, like, I've had a pattern. It's like a rainbow of narcissists since childhood. I've always been in narcissistic relationships. And so many people are focusing outward, attacking the narcissist. And, I think, one, we should all have compassion because those people, have had a lot of trauma too. But I needed to turn inwards. It wasn't about focusing outwards. I was projecting that my self-worth was satisfying others' needs. So obviously I was going to keep attracting the needy. And so it definitely requires an inward focus instead of an external one.
It's very ironic that you were a lawyer before, so you studied contracts. And so aren't all relationships a kind of a contract? And when someone does something to you, it's because you allow that to happen and you don't stand your ground because you don't know yourself and you buy into that belief system. You're not good enough, you're, unworthy, you'll fail, you agree.
Yes. And and that's one of the reasons why it was really important for me to share my story, because, so many people get criticized, why did you leave? Why didn't you do something differently? And, a lot of women, not that, men don't experience these things too, but, they have children, they might be financially dependent on their spouse, et cetera. Here I was, a highly educated person with all the objective trappings of success, totally financially independent. And here I was struggling. And that's why, again, it's not rational. I'm like, why am I allowing myself to be treated like this? And it's shocking how impactful childhood is. And, trauma, particularly at the childhood age, before 7, when our brains are developing, it literally changes the function and the structure of our brain. So I could say from here till kingdom come, I'm worthy, I'm lovable, I'm enough. And I know deep down, I most definitely was not feeling that way. And to this day, if I shut my eyes and say, I'm enough, I'm loved, I feel it. I feel it throughout my body. So I don't think people appreciate how impactful childhood development is. And I think I'm sorry.
Yeah, so after you realize that intellectually, there's a process really of practice where you have to feel the transition. You can't just tell yourself, as you said, you just can't say the words and then believe it. It's a process, a practice, like going to the gym and exercising your muscles. And eventually the muscles get stronger, but it doesn't happen overnight.
Correct. I mean, you're changing your neural pathways, that's for sure. And HeartMath certainly does that. And writing my memoir, I'd always heard about journaling. And to me, that was like, why do I want to just keep reliving, the same trauma? But it's not like that at all. It really helps you release it. So writing it was extraordinarily cathartic. And I highly suggest anyone, writing their story, journaling. It was kind of my healing process
Yep.
unfolding, live page by page.
Because what's happening is that you're getting it out of the subjective, putting it down outside of
Mm-hmm.
yourself, and then you can come back and observe and analyze it like the story happened to someone else. You can
Mm-hmm.
look at it from a completely different perspective, in a
Yes.
more well-rounded way. You can see things completely differently, and therefore you can get a better handle on how to heal or solve that problem rather than you're in the middle of the mess and you can't see your way out of it.
Right. And at first, when I was writing, I kind of approached it clinically. And then when I was editing, that's when I was really having the emotional come to terms with it. But it was a
Yeah.
very useful process. And, again, I had repressed and suppressed all my life just because simply I didn't know. I thought it was just wallowing in it. I didn't know what to do. And that's when things just got so bad. I'm like, this is not the way I want to live my life,
Yeah.
because I was always happy and full of zest. And I was just, biding time.
And you had to listen to those inner alarm bells, didn't you? That's often ignored by people, and then they let it get worse and worse. And it can severely impact your physical health. It can end up in disease in several parts of the body because trauma and stress suppress the immune system. So that leaves you open to catching everything, and cancers related to viruses and bacteria and bugs because the pH of the body gets lower. Your metabolism changes. You can develop diabetes. So many offshoots from just putting up with stress and not resolving it.
Correct. I have a free, it's free everywhere except Amazon, because they make you do charge 99 cents. But it's called Release Yourself Part One. And it details the unbelievable ravages of chronic stress, mentally, emotionally, physically, behaviorally. And I experienced all of those. And I think it's shocking. And I think that we're very dismissive of chronic stress. And, I think it's like 85% of doctors' visits, there's a stress element to that. And stress is intimately related to chronic inflammation as well as oxidative stress. And all these things are causative, if not either contributory or causative factors in most ailments and most diseases. And we're not treating it that way. And if we identify the problem and stop being dismissive, there's so many things that we can do to where we don't have to live this way. And instead of medicating, I also have like a hugs not drugs philosophy, because like I took benzodiazepines and stuff, and I hated them because yes, it was numbing my pain, but it was numbing my happiness too. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I didn't do it for long because I'm like, that's just not the way I want to live life. That's not the answer.
It's not. Life isn't just instant noodles and quick fixes because
Yeah.
they always make things worse. It's the way. It's a discipline, but if you
Mm-hmm.
practice, you get to love that discipline, and then it just becomes the only way to live because it's the happy way to live. Uh, you know,
Exactly.
you can't be lazy about it, but you get to love the practice of it.
I think that with trauma, the worst feeling is, feeling alone and feeling hopeless. And it's so empowering to realize that we have control over it. And so that is just so liberating. And to me, it's, fundamental prerequisite to being happy. You have to realize that happiness is from within, so that no external event, circumstance, trauma, tragedy, whatever, can take that away from you. Not meaning you're not going to ever have a sad moment, but like to have a baseline that happiness is your default state, which, that's what I want for everyone: happiness, health, and harmony. And I really think that there are paths to get there.
Well, it's about understanding who you are, and when you're allowed to express the uniqueness of who you are and be
Mm-hmm.
heard by others. So that requires relationship with at least one other, but people you might have friends or colleagues or somebody, does not always family, because sometimes family can
Right.
be quite cruel and not understand and not evolve themselves, haven't resolved their own problems. Um, it could be anyone in the world, but someone you will relate to that's on your side, that has your back, that is truly a
Yes.
friend, as a sounding board, because we're not meant to be like a hermit on an island. We're built to have relationship with others, and if we cut off from that, it makes us very sick.
And I think that that's an excellent point, because so often I think when people are in, disrespectful, abusive relationships, people are like, you have to be alone, you have to be alone, you have to be alone. No, trauma is a disconnect, and to heal from it, you need profound connections. But it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. As you said, it doesn't have to be your family. Throughout my book, I reference earth angels, my best friends, as well as just random strangers. Like, I get emotional just thinking about it. After my husband tried to kill me, the apartment I was in was, pretty devastated. And there was a cleaning person, and I was at the emergency room, and she just cleaned with such tender, loving care. Like, even like a towel in a heart shape. It just those little things. And they repaired my apartment, never said a word to me. They saved my life by intervening, because I was in an apartment, and if someone hadn't intervened, I wouldn't be here. And I always say that my husband trying to kill me is what catapulted me to living my authentic life, the rest of my life, the best of my life. I try to look at things as things that happened for me, not to me.
You turned lead into gold. That's the alchemy. I think that's the meaning of
Yes.
alchemy in our life on a spiritual level. We
Mm-hmm.
we take the challenge, we overcome it by turning something bad into good, and we get a
Yes.
benefit.
And, I reference different inspirations throughout all my writings, including the Dalai Lama and Helen Keller and Nelson Mandela. People have just really done exactly what you said, in a very inspiring way.
That, like, it kind of happened to me too. I was on a treadmill of extreme stress and um, having sleep deprivation. I developed in 2008 severe heart arrhythmias, and discovered, from a lot of testing, I had severely low levels of magnesium, which directly affect the central nervous system, the heart rhythm, the whole electrical nervous system. So it affected my breathing, sleep. I was just feeling horrible all the time and not living. And
Yes.
and my digestive system wasn't working because stress shuts down the vagus nerve to some extent. It doesn't work. And then you're not getting the nutrition from the food. Even if you think you're eating fresh, healthy, organic foods, you've got to be relaxed and in the parasympathetic mode when eating. So I solved a lot of those issues by soaking and bathing in magnesium, because it just helped me move into that super relaxed space very easily. It was coming in from the outside. And once I was feeling relaxed, then I could work more on moving into the meditation and just feeling that
Mm-hmm.
quiet space and resting, relaxing, because it's in that relaxation space that we recover, we detox, we rebuild cells. It all happens in the parasympathetic mode. It happens during sleep, when we're in deep sleep. So we can't always be revved up all the time, because then the good stuff doesn't happen.
And, I think that's where like a lot of self-awareness comes in. And, I think people just blindly listen to so much advice without advocating for themselves and without delving into any research. And I mean, it is shocking. And like I said, when I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, not only was that because of chronic stress, but I also really think it was because of vitamin and mineral deficiencies. And something that drives me nuts in society is dieting. Dieting is a verb, when instead we should be focusing on nourishing. And there are so many diets, which by definition are causing vitamin and mineral deficiencies, and things like significantly impacting, as you said, the central nervous system. So your stress levels, your sleep, etc. And it's just getting worse. It's not getting better. And then we're
Yeah.
like bombarded with social media, which is not really social, and we have less connections. And so, I mean, I'm blessed to live in the Mediterranean, which has the magnesium rich sea, and
Yeah.
the Mediterranean diet, which is a mainstay of mine, like whole grains, leafy greens, nuts and
Yes.
seeds and seafood. And yet I
Yep. And the
still
good
supplement
fats.
with magnesium. Yes. Yes. So in vitamins, B, C, D, omega-3s, zinc, and magnesium, the relaxation mineral. And
Yep.
most people are deficient. And like I said, I
Yep.
supplement, even though I think I do a really good job with my diet, and I can tell instantly when I'm low.
Well, the blessing for me in my encounter with near death from the heart issues, was that I discovered transdermal magnesium gave me a lot more than I could ever get orally. And then we
Mm-hmm.
used that principle, because I didn't always have time to do the soaking, but every day I needed magnesium. We developed skin and body care products, creams, lotions, sprays for all different skin types, different age groups, but very user-friendly and something that you can find that you like to use every day, and it gives you a huge boost. And when you build up your magnesium reserves, it gives you strength from the inside out, because several scientific studies have shown the lower the magnesium levels get, the more sensitive to stress that you become. You
Yes,
can't
it
handle
increases your
things.
susceptibility. Correct.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite things is soak. I don't really have baths here, but every day I was soaking with Epsom salts. And I do also like the transdermal application of it.
Yeah. So Epsom salts, if you've got nothing else, by all means, it's better than
Mm-hmm.
nothing. But
Mm-hmm.
magnesium chloride, if you can get that, gives you more bang for your buck. You get more magnesium per volume, and it's also nicer on the skin as well. It's very,
And I think
very
that's
skin softening.
right. And I think that's, to have someone who has products that they truly understand, appreciate, and have impacted them. And yeah, there's so many different types of magnesium. So knowing which one you should take, that's really good advice.
Yes, so I encourage people who are interested to go to electromagnesium.com.au and have a look around. And I'd like to let our audience know also where they can go to find out what you've written, what you
Mm-hmm.
teach, where can they connect with you?
So the best way is through my website, which is mediterraneanme.org. And then my books are available on, Amazon, all online realtors, Sophia with a PH, and then Elan, ELAN, but mediterraneanme.org is my website.
Okay, we'll also put that in the show notes underneath the video. So thank you again. I really appreciate this great conversation. I'm sure people will get a lot out of it. Thank you.
My pleasure. I'm really enjoying your podcasts.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I do my best. Cheers. I hope you liked this conversation and will share it with others. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to listen to other Body Charge conversations, click like, subscribe, the bell icon, and click all notifications. Subscribe to our newsletter to get updates on blogs, podcasts, videos, and magnesium special offers at electromagnesium.com.au. Relax, recharge, and recover.